How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck. Can you guys believe it's already August? I'm like pretty bummed about it. When I lived in California, the weather was the same every day and I hated that, but then I moved here and now summer feels like it goes by way too quick. Anyway, in today's video, I've got 3 news topics to cover for you guys. The first one is that because of an Easter egg on the Steam Deck box, Steam Decks are being stolen. The second news story is that in the latest Steam beta, Valve has shown the Steam Deck even more love. And third, a new game got added to the list of games that get a specific graphics boost on Steam Deck, so it might be worth trying out. All right, let's jump into the first news story here, which is definitely a weird one. So if you've bought a new Steam Deck, like a LCD or an OLED, you probably noticed that on the box that you get it in, it basically is like the box and then the case. There's no outside box like you would have on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or like a laptop or any other tech that you really buy. And on the outside of that box is an Easter egg that references Portal. It shows the direction that the box should be facing, and it's using a companion cube to signify that, like to show that the box should be like facing down when you deliver it, so that when people open the box, the Steam Deck case is facing upwards towards them. I remember way back to when the Steam Deck came out, I thought that was so cool. I'm pretty sure you could go back to the unboxing video I did like around the time I created this channel, because I actually started it before the Steam Deck came out and did some news updates on when it would be coming and everything like that. But once I finally got it, I did an unboxing and I was so excited about the Portal Easter egg, because when I was growing up, Portal was awesome. I didn't really have this knowledge of Valve's earlier games because I didn't grow up with a gaming PC. I had an Xbox, an Xbox 360, a PS3, and everything like that. I also had a Game Boy and all the Nintendo consoles, but like I did not have a PC. So when the Orange Box came out, I was stoked to play that, because not only was it awesome to see this bundle that was just a regular old full price game that came with Half-Life 2, all of its expansions, it came with Team Fortress 2, and it came with Portal, but once I got it with my friends at Blockbuster for my birthday that year, like I was just so excited to play Portal because it seemed like this totally new and revolutionary game. And then when I graduated high school, Portal 2 came out. It was one of my favorite games that year. I actually played it on my MacBook Pro. I was so excited. That was actually my first gaming PC. I got a 15-inch MacBook Pro for college with a dedicated GPU. The first thing I did was use Boot Camp to install Windows 7 on it, and my first 2 games were Portal 2 and Call of Duty Black Ops. So that was like a great nostalgic moment for me to see Portal reference not only on the box of the Steam Deck, but also in Aperture Desk Job, the sort of like Wii Sports packing game that you could use to get to know the way that your Steam Deck worked. But it turns out that little logo on the box that references Portal is resulting in Steam Decks being stolen by delivery drivers, which really sucks. Now, I originally read this article on PC Games N, and I was honestly shocked at how many people have listed this happening on Reddit. It's not just happening to the Steam Deck LCD, it's also happening to the Steam Deck OLED, and it's such a we can't have nice things situation, because if Valve wants to fix this, the only thing they can do is remove the fun little Easter egg from the Steam Deck box when they ship it out, and that blows because, you know, it was a cool thing for me personally as someone who grew up with Portal and Portal 2 to see those referenced by Valve. Even if they're not making a new game, it's still cool to see that history work its way back into the Steam Deck. And now, because delivery drivers who just want to get a free Steam Deck are stealing them, the only solution, like I just said, is to remove that Easter egg from the box. Thankfully, Valve seems to be one of those companies that actually cares about their customers. I mean, we just talked about it in the last video where they're providing official support and updates for the Deck HD screen, because even though there's only a few people out there who got them, the fact that they have to reflash their operating system every time a Steam Deck gets an update kind of ruins the whole experience of upgrading your screen. So Valve went out of their way to include drivers for that screen in future updates, which I think is cool. And also, they've replaced Steam Decks that were totally voided of their warranty, like through people doing user error upgrades that would eventually break their Steam Deck. Valve has been extremely cool about fixing them. I mean, when they switched to United Radio, things got a little bit wishy-washy. Like my experience getting my Steam Deck replaced was much better before United Radio came into the picture, but still, with that one caveat, I still think they are pretty much the top tier when it comes to replacing things under or out of warranty and making sure that people who buy a Steam Deck are supported in as many ways as possible. So yeah, if your Steam Deck gets stolen off your porch, I would assume at the very least Valve will be forthcoming and cool about making sure they ship you out a new one without charging you for the replacement, which obviously they should do. But like talking about this whole Asus situation, talking about how many other PC manufacturers, like my preferred one, Razer, I pray that nothing goes wrong with this laptop, because you basically have to pay the shipping cost to get it to Singapore to get it fixed, and then you're not going to have it for a matter of months, which really sucks. So yeah, comparing Valve to everyone else, I think they are pretty much the cream of the crop, but still, I'd love to hear if this has happened to you. I feel really bad, but like, I just want to know how widespread this issue is. So if your Steam Deck was stolen because of that Easter egg that's on the box, please let me know down in the comments below. Anyway, that brings us to the second news story here, which is me giving my endorsement of the Steam Deck beta channel, at least the current one, because the features that are in it were already announced, but they've added some other features that I think are pretty cool. So the first small feature that's going to come along with using the beta software on your Steam Deck is now when you're playing on the Steam Deck, there will be a little icon next to your name on your friends list. I think this is really cool. I thought it was weird that like this never happened, because if you play Ghost of Tsushima on PC, like your PlayStation 5 friends will see a little PC logo next to your name. And I added all of the people who wanted to add me from PS Ready on my PlayStation Network account. And people were messaging me left and right when I was testing out Ghost of Tsushima on PC saying, what is this little icon next to your name? And I got to tell them that I was playing on PC. So like, it's basically free marketing to have a little logo for the Steam Deck next to people's names when they're playing on the Steam Deck, because I can't tell you how many of my friends that I talk to who, you know, play on PC, they use Xbox Game Pass, they use Steam, they're like tuned into the PC ecosystem, but they still don't really know what even a Steam Deck is, let alone an ROG Ally or a Legion Go. So it would be really cool if I was playing a game like Conscript or something like I have been in my backyard, or Crow Country, or any of the Resident Evil games I've been playing, and then on my Steam friends list, they all see a little icon next to my name that shows that I'm on my Steam Deck, and then they say, what is that logo next to your name? And then I get to tell them all about one of the greatest handhelds, if not the greatest handheld of all time. It's like free marketing for Valve, so I think that was a smart update. The Steam family sharing revamp has also been implemented. If you don't know how this works, basically you can add your friends who are in your country to your Steam library, and they can request access to play games that are in your library. So like I mentioned, I think I'm PS Ready, but my brother comes and stays with me on the weekends because he lives out in the woods. He loves using the PS5 in the basement, but I've also added him to my Steam family because I gave him one of my old Neo devices, and he's been playing Elden Ring like crazy on it, and he wanted to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 while I wasn't playing it, so I was really excited to be able to add him to my Steam family. So that's just like a really cool example of how you could use this new feature versus the way it worked before, which is like you had to add people to your sharing group, and it wasn't the best experience out there. I know they kind of changed things around, so there are a few drawbacks to the new Steam family sharing, but it was languishing. It needed an update. I think it's effective how they did it. And then finally, I noticed that when I updated my Steam Deck, that game recording is finally there. I wasn't sure how many developers were going to take advantage of the timestamps feature. So basically, if you don't know how this works, developers can use the Steam game recording to let the recorder understand what you're doing in a game. So it'll actually put a little marker on the Steam recording to say, hey, from this point on to that point, you were in menus. From this point on to that point, you were in gameplay. And from this point to that point, you were in a lobby waiting for the game to start. So that's actually really useful for someone who's a YouTuber who records a ton of footage. I'd imagine that this would be a great feature for someone who does a lot of multiplayer gaming and maybe makes compilations or like, you know, edits of their gameplay. You could just like look at the footage. You could see when you were in the lobbies, immediately cut that out. You could see when you were in menus, immediately cut that out, and just be left with raw gameplay. That would make cutting it down to just the best clips so much easier. And for channels who test out games on the Steam Deck, I would imagine that would improve their workflow tenfold if they already knew going in when they were in menus, when they were in the settings, when they were in gameplay. And it seems like it's kind of catching on. Like, it's not a lot of games. I'm pretty sure the list of games that took advantage of this feature is up to 17, and I looked at it and I had heard of some of them. Like, there's a few JRPGs and action RPGs and stuff, but hopefully people kind of respond to this well and start using it, because that's going to convince Valve to talk to other developers and say, hey, we have this new feature with game recording that'll let you allow markers when people are in different parts of your game, and then those developers will take advantage of it. Because we've seen this a million times over on the PS5 side. There are so many features the PS5 launched with that people just didn't use, that Sony then took out in software updates, and I don't want to see that happening with game recording, or I don't want to see them kind of abandon it and never really update it because people aren't using it. So if you're on the beta channel of your Steam Deck, maybe try out game recording, share some clips, see if it works right, and provide feedback if it doesn't, because as we all know, it's still in beta, they're still collecting feedback, and Valve actually goes out of their way to take feedback from their users into account. So the worst thing thing you could do really is not at least try it out. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that brings us to the third news story here, which is we have yet another game that's been updated to allow FSR3 frame generation on the Steam Deck, and it's one that I've had on my wish list for a while. It's called Enshrouded. So the reason I haven't bought this game yet is because it's in early access. I was so excited when early access was announced. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and then I've just been burned too many times by either games being in early access and never coming out, or being in early access, not selling enough, and then they say it's finished, like it's reaching 1.0, and then the game really isn't at 1.0. It's just like they put a bookmark in it and then released it, and then they just let it go out into the ether, and that's my hard-earned money going down the garbage disposal. So I kind of stay away from early access games and wait till they actually make it to 1.0, get some reviews out there and see how they're performing. But Enshrouded looks like one that I wouldn't really feel too bad if I bought in early access, and it looks like it still has quite a few players making their way into the game. It kind of reminds me of the situation with Valheim because it's an open world action RPG that's also a survival game, so they're very similar. And since it came out, it's been listed as unsupported on Steam Deck, but I know other channels out there have figured out how to get it running, and it hasn't really been a pretty situation when it comes to performance because, like most early access games, it's not the most well optimized game out there. But they just put out an update that not only added in frame generation, which I'll talk about my thoughts on frame generation in a sec, but it also added in a default setting for the Steam Deck that allows it to apparently run a little bit better because they've optimized a lot of the games since it released into early access. Reading into it, like on Steam Deck HQ and everything, it looks like it's a little optimistic in terms of the default profile that they use. Like it's still going to be running between 15 and 30 FPS, but the big improvement here is that you can drop the settings a little bit lower and get a very comfortable 30 FPS out of the game, and that apparently really comes down to FSR3's integration. Now, when it comes to FSR3 integration on the Steam Deck, I saw a lot of people get excited for this when it was added into Spider-Man Remastered, but when you look into how frame generation actually works, the big caveat that makes it not the best for the Steam Deck is the fact that it mainly works best when you have a high input frame rate. So the best way to use it with something like Spider-Man on the Steam Deck would be to drop the settings to their absolute lowest to get the frame rate as high as possible so the AI frames aren't being inserted. Like really what it's doing is inserting those AI frames when frames are dropped, so you want to make sure that you're not dropping as many frames, because when you're introducing a lot of frames, not only does it introduce things like visual artifacting that looks terrible, it also introduces higher input lag. So what you want is to be running a game that was traditionally running at around 60 FPS to be running at 120, and then with the frame generation, everything will be buttery smooth. But on the Steam Deck, where the target profile for games is around 30 FPS at around medium settings, using FSR3 to double it to 60 results in not only degraded visuals, but also insane input lag, so it's not really worth it. I did notice when I talked about this last time, a lot of people were down in the comments saying that they don't really care or notice the frame generation issues, but like me, someone who wants the best visual quality and the most consistent frame rate, I'd always prefer to lock a game at 30 FPS and use higher settings than to lower the settings to the lowest of the low and get higher frame rates out of the game. Mainly what that comes down to is the fact that if a game can't run at around 30 or 40 FPS, I have a backup, which is my main gaming PC or the ROG Ally X in some cases, but I've really found that if a game doesn't run well on the Steam Deck, it's not going to magically work perfectly on the ROG Ally X outside of like a few like outlier type games, mainly games made by Microsoft. But the one silver lining is that if the Steam Deck is the only option you have, like it's your only gaming PC, it's the only way you have to really interact with Steam, having the option there is cool. I think it's a smart thing to do, and obviously there's no drawbacks outside of those visual ones that I've really already talked about. So hopefully as time goes on, we start to see FSR3 make its way into more games. AMD seems to be going way out of their way to buy sponsorship deals with pretty much any game they can, so I would imagine that we'll see more and more games compounding on each other that include FSR3, but until the Steam Deck gets its true Steam Deck 2 and we get that power jump that allows us to run these current gen games at higher frame rates to begin with, it's kind of like a cool feature that I'm really not going to take advantage of. But for those of you who wanted to play Enshrouded on your Steam Deck, you're definitely going to be happy to know that now you can, and you can keep it at a pretty much hard locked 30 FPS, which is great at the end of the day. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.